Welcome to Black Artists Lit. I'm your host, Nakira Cheney, and today we're reading Invisible Life by Lynn Harris. But before we get started, we have to take a moment just to take a moment and give a little bit of honor to the man that was Lynn Harris himself. Because to talk about this book that totally almost didn't exist, because this book was rejected a number of times before Elin Harris would go on to self publish it. A lot of publishers kept saying that there wasn't a market for it. They did not want to post it or publish it because it was a novel that explored Black queer lives at a time that definitely wasn't comfortable or safe to be talked about. So, and we're talking about in the early 90s. So, Elin Harris decided to do what a lot of us have done. He said, you know what? I'm going to self publish it. I'm going to do it myself. And he did. He self published this book, I believe, originally around 1991. And he sold it out of the trunk of his car, literally. I'm talking about back then, yes, going to beauty salons, barbershops. He went to places where we would gather, places, the restaurants, and places where, and he talked to them and he sold his book. And it sold so much so that it was a few years later, about 1994, when it actually was picked up and published. And from then, it was published in 1994. And he would then go on to write 10 consecutive books that would make the New York Times bestseller list, you know? So the word spread. They loved the book. There was a market for that. And that was his introduction to us. He definitely wasn't just, a first time storyteller or just someone that was writing. He would go on to become known as a phenomenal author, and the space that he opened truly mattered. After that, it was harder to say that there wasn't a market for books like this, or that there wasn't an audience, or that our stories didn't matter. Elin Harris paved the way and showed that our stories definitely didn't matter. And it was in 2009 when he was on tour for his novel Basketball Jones. He was on tour for that when he passed away. So when we're reading this book today, trust me, this is not just the first novel. We're talking about someone that gave persistence and dedicated to the community and opened up space. So thank you, Elin Harris, for opening up the space you did at a time that you did. It was an honor reading this book when I first did many, many years ago, as a young woman myself. And so now it's definitely an honor to be able to read this as part of our Black Art is Lit collection. Law school, girlfriend, and career choices were all part of Raymond Tyler's life, but there were other more terrifying issues for him to confront. Being Black was tough enough, but Raymond was becoming more and more conscious about sexual feelings that he knew weren't right. He was completely committed to Selah, his longtime girlfriend, but his attraction to Kelvin, whom he had met during his last year in law school, had become more than just a friendship. Fleeing to New York to escape both Selah and Kelvin, Raymond finds himself more confused than ever before. New relationships, both male and female, give him enormous pleasure, but keep him from finding the inner peace and lasting love he so desperately desires. The horrible illness and death of a friend eventually forced Raymond at last to face the truth. The beginning or the end. Protected by a crisp, cloudless sky, I sipped iced tea on the dusty wooden deck of my parents' home. There was a trace of heat, no humidity. It was a few days after my 29th birthday, and I was pondering the next step in my complicated life. While deep in thought, but savoring the southern tranquility, I heard my father come through the sliding glass doors. He quietly placed a large envelope addressed to Raymond Winston Tyler Jr. on the wrought iron table. gave me a half smile and returned through the doors. I immediately recognized the familiar feminine handwriting and the New York City postmark. I quickly ripped open the envelope, ignored the card, and began to read the letter on the soft pink stationery. Dear Raymond, I decided it was time I responded to your letter. How could this happen? Never before have I received a letter so filled with so much pain, yet so much love. The last 6 months have been like a wild roller coaster, full of extreme highs and lows. I find myself numb over the recent events. Why did it happen to us? Why can't we live in a perfect world? Before continuing to the next page, I laid the letter down, noticed the moisture from my iced tea glass had caused the name on the envelope to blur and dissolve into ugly black mess, bringing to mind my current life. As I studied the envelope, I asked myself, how did it happen? Chapter 1. There is something poetic about falling in love. The tingling sensation lingers like the lyrical words of a Langston Hughes poem. There is something romantic about the changing of seasons, a romance reminiscent of an unending summer or one as fleeting as spring and fall. Whenever I think back on the loves of my life, I am often reminded of the seasons. There are 4 seasons. I have been in love 4 times. It was summer when Selah, my girlfriend, and I drove the 5 hours back to campus. On this beautiful day, there was no way of knowing that my life, like the season, would soon change. My black Volkswagen wagon was filled to capacity with our clothes, books, albums, and items that we couldn't live without during the summer vacation. As we drove down Highway 17, the heavy August sun beat down on us. The Alabama sky was a shimmering summer blue. State troopers were out in numbers trying to catch the fancy cars exceeding the speed limit, giving special attention to cars with the university and Greek letter organization stickers. Sela and I were both especially excited this year because for me, it was my senior year and I would finally be heading to law school, while Sela, now a junior, was moving into her sorority house after a couple of years in the dorm. In the midst of the excitement and happiness, I was feeling a bit melancholy because this was going to be my last year. I was going to miss Sela and my fraternity brothers, who kept my life at this time, little white university, interesting and fulfilling. My fraternity, Kappa Alpha Omega, was one of the 3 black fraternities on campus, while the white fraternities and sororities were going through rush, which we never understood. We were planning a big party to welcome back the black students. We would get a head start on pressing the freshman girls to become our sweethearts and persuading the top black freshmen to pledge Kappa Alpha Omega. We decided to have the party at the house of one of our advisors, who was also one of the few black faculty members at the university. He owned a huge old rustic house outside of town, surrounded by trees so large they cast an indelectable shade over the 2 tennis courts and aqua-colored pool. It was the type of house I dreamed of one day sharing with Sela. Since I was the social chairman of my fraternity, Sela and I arrived early to make sure that everything was set. We checked the music and food and made sure the keg of beer was ice cold. Sela looked beautiful in her white tennis outfit. It was a pleated short skirt with a matching top that looked wonderful against her vanilla wafer brown complexion. Her long black hair was pulled together with a crimson satin ribbon that flowed down her back. Her face, with deep dimples and almond-shaped hazel eyes, was accented by an open smile. As I watched Sela help our sweethearts prepare for the party, I thought back to the time almost 6 years ago when I had first laid eyes on her. It was the annual citywide basketball tournament, and about 5 of my football teammates and I went over to North Birmingham to Northeast High for a game. Northeast High was like most of the high schools in Birmingham, an all-black basketball team and a cheerleader lineup of blue-eyed blondes, with the exception of a pair of identical brunette twins. As my eyes made it to the end of the line, I saw the most beautiful black girl I had ever seen. She had 2 thick ponytails, one with a gold ribbon and the other with a light blue ribbon, that matched her uniform perfectly. Whenever there was a timeout, Northeast prep band started to play and the cheerleaders ran onto the court and started their well rehearsed pom pom routines. The black girl in the end was spectacular. She appeared to be using her ponytails and high kicks to conduct the band. As her kicks got higher, her ponytail and high kicks got higher, temporarily blocking her view but never causing her to miss a beat. Her blue, gold, and white pleated skirt twirled like a kaleidoscope against her light brown skin. As the band played the theme from Shaft, the cheerleaders and crowd chanted in unison, "Go Chargers! Beat those Bears! Go Chargers!" I became mesmerized by the cheerleader from the opposing school. I became so wrapped up in her that I wanted to cheer for the Northeast High instead of my own school. While I watched the cheerleaders' every move, someone came up behind me and put his huge arm around my neck in a playful strangle. When I was released, I turned around and recognized Bruce Grayson, one of Northeast's star football players. "Ray Tyler, what are you doing in my neck of the woods?" Bruce asked. "I'm over here to see my boys kick some Northeast butt," I joked. Bruce and I had both met during the summer when we were both training at the President's Health Spa downtown. After talking for a couple of minutes, I asked Bruce who this vision of Ebony Beauty was. He told me her name was Celia Richards and that she was his play little sister. During halftime, Bruce introduced me to Celia. When he left the two of us alone, I became so nervous, not knowing what to say or to do, that I put my hands into my orange and white leather football jacket, took them out and placed them in my tight fitting blue jeans, and just kept staring at Celia. When I finally found the courage to ask Celia for her phone number, one of the girls in the cheerleading squad came up and grabbed her, telling her it was time for the second half. She smiled at me. "It was nice meeting you," she said, and ran off with the blue-eyed blonde. During the second half, I thought of ways to approach Celia after the game. Before the game ended, Bruce came up to me and gave me a little piece of paper. "Celia asked me to give this to you," he said, smiling. I looked at the paper, and there they were, the 7 digits that would lead to my first love. That night, I couldn't sleep for thinking of Celia. I got up at 6:30 a.m. the next morning and called her at 7:15 before I left for school. Our first date was that evening at Baskin Robbins. Our romance blossomed quickly, even though we lived in different parts of the city and went to different high schools. I attended every Northeast game they had in the city, often borrowing my father's car to take Celia and some of her cheerleader friends to basketball games outside the city. I gave Celia my football jacket, and she gave me her tiny gold cheerleader megaphone chain with the Northeast emblem. It was not long before I had fallen in love with the first female in my life other than my mother, grandmother, or favorite aunt. It didn't take long before the party started jumping. A sweet rain had lifted the dizzy August heat. Since Kappa Alpha Omega was the largest black fraternity on campus, we always had the initial party, and almost every black student on campus would be there, even those bookworms who would probably wouldn't attend any other party all year long. It was great seeing everybody, catching up on what had happened during the summer and seeing the latest dances that people brought back to campus. As the night went on, I had noticed a tall, muscular guy who seemed to be attracting a lot of attention from all the females. He stood against one of the banisters looking unapproachable, not saying a word. He was dressed in white linen and looked too mature to be a freshman. From his muscular body, I could tell he was a jock, but he wasn't with the athletes at the party. Celia and her sorority sisters gathered in a clique, laughing and flirting with the stranger. He danced with a couple of them. I could tell from the way he danced and from his haircut, extra short on the sides, that he was not from the South. No, this guy was East Coast for real. The party lasted into the wee hours of the morning, and after the beer ran out, we switched to Kappa Alpha Omega Punch, a combination of fruit juices and pure grain alcohol. The next morning, I woke up with one of the worst hangovers ever, but I had to get up to drive to Birmingham and catch a plane to New Orleans for my cousin's wedding. Why Terrence and Beverly chose August instead of June was a complete mystery to everyone in the wedding party. While on the Delta flight to New Orleans, I had a dream that bothered me. I didn't quite remember all the details, but the stranger from the party the night before was in it. He was visiting the campus to see if he might want to come to school the next year. All during my stay in steamy New Orleans, I thought about the dream. I was puzzled as to why I was dreaming about a guy I had only seen once and to whom I had never spoken a word. My return flight to school went smoothly and didn't include any illusions about the stranger, Arcela, whom I dreamed of often when we were separated. The football season rolled around, and with it, much cooler weather. Fall was advancing against the backdrop of an immense sky. Braids of yellow, red, and teal leaves created delicate hues as beautiful as the sweaters worn by my classmates. September flew by, and on the first Friday in October, I was in a locker room at the athletic complex after hitting some tennis balls with one of my frat brothers, Trent Walters. Trent finished his shower and started back to the frat house, where we always gathered before starting the weekend of partying. This was the weekend of our first home football game, so there would be some serious party. Kappa Alpha Omega was given a party too, but this weekend we would be competing with the two other black fraternities for attendees. After I finished dressing, I headed toward the exit of the locker room. I was looking down at my shoes, trying to decide if they needed shining. While trying to adjust my collar from the back, I bumped into a hard body. "Oh, excuse me," I said. I wasn't paying attention to where I was going. "Sure, no problems," the stranger said. When I looked up at him, my mouth dropped open. It was him, the guy from the party, the guy in my dream. "Do you have a comb?" he asked. "Excuse me?" I was in a complete state of shock. Was I seeing and hearing him correctly? "Do you have a comb?" he repeated. "A comb?" I repeated as I tried to regain my composure. "Yes, a comb." "I don't think so. Let me look." I suddenly became very nervous. He was staring at me as I frantically looked in my gym bag for a comb. "It doesn't look like I have one," I said. "I'm sorry." "No reason to be," he said. "Thanks anyway." As the stranger walked away, I stood in the same spot, speechless, not knowing what to do next. Suddenly, the stranger stopped and turned around toward me. "Where's the closest place you can buy liquor around here?" he asked. "Duncan County, about 35 miles away." "Do you go to school here?" I asked. "Yes, unfortunately, I do." "Why say it like that?" "Well, this place is different." "Yes, it is. Where are you from?" "Philadelphia." "Philadelphia?" I asked, a bit surprised. "Ever heard of it?" "Of course. How did you wind up down here?" "Football scholarship." "Oh, my name is Kelvin Ellis," he said, extending his massive hand toward me. "Raymond Tyler," I said as we shook the regular way and then went into Black Power handshake. "Where are you from, Raymond?" "Alabama." "The whole state?" he asked with a smile, exposing almost perfectly white teeth. "No, I'm from Birmingham." "I've heard of Birmingham." Kelvin and I had now walked out of the locker room toward the enormous football stadium that anchored the athletic complex while talking about school and the game tomorrow. "What position do you play?" I asked. "Defensive back." "Are you playing tomorrow?" "No, I sprained my ankle this week." "That's why I was down in the locker room in the whirlpool getting treatment." "Oh, do you have a car?" he asked. "Yes." "How much would you charge to run me down to Duncan? I've got to get some brew." "Nothing. I have to go anyway to pick up some beer for my fraternity." "What dorm are you in?" "Westview, the athletic dorm." "Okay, be outside in about 30 minutes. I'll be in a black Volkswagen." "Great." I got into my car. I wanted to see if Sela wanted to ride to Duncan with me and my new friend. While I was driving, I began thinking about the dream I had about Kelvin. Should I tell him? No, he would think I was weird. I began to hum the theme music from The Twilight Zone to myself as I pulled up in front of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority house. I went inside and asked the girl at the desk to page Celia Richards. Celia Richards, you have a guest downstairs," she called over the loudspeakers. 5 minutes later, there was no sign of Celia. I left and went to my apartment, changed clothes, and headed towards Westview Hall. When I came to Westview, I could see Kelvin standing against the bike rack. He had changed clothes too. As I approached the dorm, I blew my horn and rolled down my window. "Get in," I said. "You don't have to say it but once," he smiled. As we drove down the highway toward Duncan, I could feel Kelvin staring at me. When we talked, He looked me straight in the eyes. I wasn't sure why, but this made me feel a bit uneasy. We talked about sports, school, and of course, females. We stopped at the first liquor store in Duncan. Kelvin purchased a case of beer and I bought 2 cases, plus a 6 pack for the ride back to campus. While our initial conversation started out tense, after the first beer, we both appeared to loosen up. Are you dating anyone? Kelvin asked. Yes, Celia Richards. She's a Delta and my HTH. HTH? Yes. Haven't you heard of Hometown Honey? Hell no, Kelvin laughed. HTH. The time seemed to go by fast. I became comfortable talking with Kelvin. He was very bright for a freshman. He had a deep baritone voice and a wonderful East Coast accent. He was very pleasant and seemed to know exactly what he wanted out of life. Yes, I thought to myself, a perfect Kappa Alpha Omega pledge prospect. What about you? I asked. Do you have a girlfriend? Yes, back in Philly. The babes here are so country. I guess. I was driving pretty fast. With the sunroof open, the cool October wind breezed through the car. We had drunk a couple cans of beer, and I started to get a slight buzz. Plus, I had to piss. Mind if I pull over? The beer has me running. No problem, I can use the stretch. I pulled over along the side of the road, and we both let out some of the beer we had consumed. The oyster-colored sky appeared solid as the setting sun shivered against it and the light breeze blew its own way. Kelvin and I sat on the front of my car and continued our conversation. He told me about growing up in Philly. I shared with Kelvin some of my childhood memories growing up in the South. I couldn't believe how comfortable I felt talking with him. I gave Kelvin my opinion of different people and places on campus and of the virtues of pledging Kappa Alpha Omega. Kelvin seemed interested in most of my conversations, but sometimes he appeared to be staring off into Never Never Land. Do you consider yourself open-minded? He asked as we got back into my car. Yeah, I do. How open? Pretty open. As we got closer to campus, Kelvin's questions became more personal. I wondered what he meant by open-minded. Do you sleep with your girlfriend regularly? He asked. Often enough. It's hard sometimes with her in a sorority house and me in a one-bedroom apartment with a roommate, but my roommate and I have worked out a system. A system? Yeah, we have signals. Like this weekend, he has to vacate the premises. He will either break the dorm rooms and stay with his girlfriend, or he'll stay with one of the fraternity brothers. Oh, I see. Would you like to come by my apartment and help me finish this beer? I asked. Sure, why not? I'm out of football for a few weeks. Okay, man, let's do it. I'm game. Once we reached my apartment, I gave Kelvin another beer. I was putting the rest in the refrigerator when he walked into the kitchen. Nice apartment. How much is the rent? $250. $250? You're kidding. No, $250. A place like this near Penn would cost 3 times that. It would? Yeah, it would. Raymond, can I ask you something? He was staring at me again, with his light brown eyes and their curling black eyelashes. There was an ardent look about them. No man had ever looked at me like this. Sure. What did you think I meant when I asked if you were open-minded? I don't know. I really didn't think about it. You didn't? No, I didn't. What do you mean? Well, I'm not sure the good people of Alabama are going to be able to deal with me. Why? I asked. Because I'm bisexual, Kelvin said. You're what? I asked, almost spitting out the beer I had just swallowed. Bisexual. I make it with guys and girls. Haven't you heard of it? Yeah, sure. We had sissies at my high school. Do I look like a sissy to you? No, of course not, but what? By this time I was getting nervous. Kelvin was standing very close to me, literally blocking my path to the living room and front door. Should I run or should I hit him? I just stood there and continued trying to talk, trying to change the conversation. You want to grab a pizza? You're avoiding my question. No, I'm not. It's just what? Well, Kevin, you're a good looking guy. You could probably get any girl you want. And I do. Don't you like girls? I love women. Nobody eats trim better than me. Trim? Yeah, pussy. Oh, then tell me, Kevin, why in the fuck would you want to mess around with a man? Variety is the spice of life, if you say so. So, Ray, tell me, have you ever made it with a guy? Hell no, I protested. Don't get bent out of shape, Raymond. The questions and conversations were making me agitated. I wanted to appear more sophisticated. Maybe this was an East Coast thing. Did Kelvin guess about the one time I had experimented with my cousin Marcus, where we both were about 9 years old? We had really only compared the size of our growing Peters. How could he possibly know? I looked Kelvin straight in the eyes. I'm not bent out of shape. That shit's not my style. Maybe you haven't run across the right man. Trying to avoid Kelvin's eyes, I looked down at the gold shag carpet. When I decided to look up, I noticed Kelvin's erection bulging through his jeans and became even more nervous. What had I gotten myself into? This guy was bigger than me. There was a brief, uncomfortable pause. The silence was as heavy as one of my grandma's homemade quilts. Well, man, we'd better head back towards campus, I said. Sure. Come here for a second. There's something in your hair. Without thinking, I moved closer to Kelvin. With the palm of his hands, he softly rubbed my entire face. I quickly pulled back. What the fuck are you doing? I shouted. A slight smile flickered over his face and he said, Your skin looks so smooth that I had to touch it. I didn't respond, silenced by his stare. His eyes were deep set and defiant. Then he touched my nose and moved his fingers down to my lips. I don't know why, but I didn't stop him as he cut my face and suddenly kissed my lips. I couldn't believe it, but it felt so natural. It was the first time I had ever kissed a man. I had never felt a spasm of sexual attraction toward a man, honest to God. But his kiss? I had never kissed anyone like this, not even Sela. Before I was conscious of it, I was kissing Kelvin back and putting my arms around his waist. His force left little room for hesitation or resistance. I felt his strong body pressed toward mine and an erection in my jockey underwear, just aching to come out. I finally managed to pull back when I realized my sex was now full and hard, pressing against my navel. Kelvin stared down at me, gave a half-cocked grin, and then pulled me toward him once again. This time there was no resistance. What was happening? This was sinful, sexual longing. This was wrong. Everything in my head screamed no, yet my body was saying yes. We stood in the kitchen kissing nonstop for almost an hour. Where's your roommate? Kelvin whispered in my ear. Don't worry, he'll call first, I said. All of a sudden, I felt Kelvin's hands touch my sex. And then, with a little motion, his hands unzipped my jeans, releasing my throbbing penis. He continued to kiss passionately as he led me to the bedroom. Everywhere he touched became sensitive. My nerves became raw, tingling with unknown enjoyment. The movement of his body against mine felt as sensuous as powdered sheets. Moments later, we were both butt naked, lying on the edge of my twin bed. We managed to stop long enough to push the beds together. On that night, the first Friday in October, I experienced passion and sexual satisfaction that I had never in my 21 years dreamed possible. Until that Friday evening in October, sex with females was all that I knew. I never imagined sex with a male. Sure, I had noticed or envied guys with great bodies while playing high school football, but I never thought of it in a sexual context. I had never before given a man's body such lofty regard as I did with Kelvin. How would I have known that rubbing two male sexual organs together would bring such a complete feeling of ecstasy? I woke up nude and with a slight hangover. Oh my God, I thought, as I sat up straight and jumped out of the makeshift bed. What had I done? Where was my overnight guest? I slipped my jeans on and ran from the bedroom through the kitchen and into the living room to see if the front door was locked. Thank God it was. What had happened to Kelvin? As I walked back toward my bedroom, I heard a knock at the front door. Could that be Kelvin? I put a sweatshirt on and quickly opened the door. Are you ready? Sela asked as she walked through the door. Ready for what? The game, silly. Doesn't my uniform tell you anything? Sela was the only black pom-pom girl at the university, and she was all decked out in her red and blue uniform. What time is it? I asked. It's 11:30 and I have to be at the stadium by noon. Oh shit, I must have overslept. What did you get into last night? She asked. What? Are you deaf? They told me you came by the house, but when I called you, I got no answer. I was at the party at your fraternity house last night, and nobody had seen you or heard or hear from you. I was studying. On a Friday night? Yes, the LSAT is next Saturday. Oh well, should I wait on you or not? Go ahead, I'll meet you at halftime. Okay, can I have a kiss? No, not now, I said, pushing Sela away. I have morning breath and I haven't brushed my teeth. Suit yourself. It's not like I haven't tasted your morning breath before. Sela said as she grabbed her purse and left the apartment in a huff. After Sela left, I began to panic. What if Kelvin had set me up and now everybody on campus knew about last night's escapade? What if he told one of Sela's sorority sisters, or even worse, one of my fraternity brothers? I would have to drop out of school and transfer to A-State or Auburn in my senior year. I thought about the humiliation my parents and fraternity would feel. I would probably be kicked out. Should I go to the game or should I stay here and map out a plan of denial? I suddenly felt sick to my stomach. I quickly rushed to the toilet. After some thought, I decided to go to the game. By the time I reached the stadium, it was almost halftime. The few people I ran into seemed to act normal, nothing out of the ordinary. As I approached the section where my fraternity brothers were sitting, they all stood up and started clapping. What was the deal? They were standing up, clapping and chanting, "Ray, Ray, Ray." "What's up?" I asked. "We're glad you could grace us with your presence," Kenny Adams, the president of the fraternity, said. "Where have you been?" "What do you mean, where have I been?" I asked defensively. "I'm just running a little late." I looked at my ticket stub and located my seat. "Sorry I asked. We just missed you last night," Kenny replied. I gave Kenny a firm look, wondering if he knew Kelvin. Maybe he was gay and this was part of some plan he had devised. No, Kenny wouldn't do that, I thought. Why was I being so paranoid? Did I have any reason to be? Maybe, maybe not. During halftime, Sela came up to our section, grabbed my hand and said, "Can I have a kiss now, Mr. Tyler?" "Sure." As I kissed Sela in front of my fraternity brothers and the stadium filled with a crowd of over 80,000 spectators, I thought everything seemed normal. Maybe last night had never happened. It was just a bad dream. Or was it a nightmare just beginning? After the game, Sela and I went to our usual after the game restaurant, Ben's Barbecue, which had the finest food in town. We could only afford it about once a month. The restaurant was filled with the aroma of Ben's famous barbecue and the sounds of French fries and onion rings hitting hot grease. It always had a diverse mix of people: black students, white students, alumni, and local folks. Ben served the best onion rings I had ever tasted, and the beer was always cold. Being the only black pom pom girl, Sela was something of a local celebrity. Several alumni always came over to our table to talk and gawk at her. Most of the time, they simply ignored me. I didn't mind, especially today. I had my own problems. I kept thinking about the night before. What had happened? Why had I let it happen? Why had I enjoyed it? After we left Ben's, we headed to my apartment to finally spend some time alone and to get in our weekly lovemaking. This was an event that I usually looked forward to. But on this Saturday, I didn't want Sela to touch me. Maybe I didn't feel clean, or maybe I now viewed my body differently. Once we got back to the apartment, I grabbed a beer from the previous evening's excursion to Duncan. Sela went into my bedroom and changed from her uniform into tight-fitting jeans and a red cashmere sweater. I didn't bother to change from my starched khaki slacks and stiff white Oxford shirt. I sat on the sofa, gazing at the TV, not really aware of what was on. Sela came in and sat on my lap in an obviously romantic mood. We started kissing, and just when I started to loosen her bra, there was a knock at the door. "Are you expecting anyone?" Sela asked. "Not that I could think of," I answered. I got up, tucked my shirt back into my pants, and opened the door. When I opened the door, there he stood, Kelvin. No, I guess last night was not a dream. A wave of shame suddenly came over me. "Hi, I'm sorry." Before he finished his sentence, Kelvin noticed Sela sitting on the sofa and quickly stopped his words and his approach into my living room. "Hi, I'm sorry. I must have the wrong apartment." "I'm looking for Linton Johnson's apartment," he said. "Do you know the apartment number?" I asked. Kelvin had a strange look on his face. It was a mixture of surprise and disappointment. 15J, Kelvin said. "Oh, you're at the wrong building. J is about 2 buildings over." "Hold on a minute. I'll show you where it is." "Gee, thanks. I appreciate that." I hurried back to the sofa where Sela sat looking at me. Kelvin stood in the door looking away from the apartment. I slipped on my brown penny loafers and avoided the curious look on Sela's face. As I walked out and closed the door behind me, Kelvin turned to face me. Man, I'm really sorry, he said. Oh, don't be ridiculous. It's no problem. Let's walk out by my car. I didn't mean to leave so early this morning, but you looked like you were sleeping so soundly that I just couldn't wake you up. Why did you leave so early? I forgot to tell you that even though I'm not playing with the team, I still had to attend a mandatory team breakfast, and I didn't want any questions if someone happened to see me leave here early in the morning. So what time did you leave? Just before sunrise. I was beginning to worry. I didn't know what to think. I thought maybe last night was a dream. Well, it was a dream for me. A dream come true. Kelvin said, Don't say that. We have to talk. I said, looking away from Kelvin. When? Well, definitely not now. It'd have to be Sunday or Monday. How about Sunday at 4? Kelvin suggested. I don't know. It's hard to say. You do want to see me again, don't you? Yeah, no, I'm not sure. Well, you think about it. I'll be standing in front of the student union at 4 sharp. I'll wait 15 minutes. Then I'm history. That sounds fair, I said. Later. Okay, later. As Kelvin walked away from the apartment parking lot, I wondered why I was being such a jerk. I started to call his name out loud and tell him to come back so we can talk when I suddenly heard someone call my name. Ray, Sela yelled out. Yeah, I said, still watching Calvin walk up the hill and disappear into the neighborhood, heading toward campus. What are you doing? Hold on, I'm getting a book from my car. I walked over to my car and realized that I didn't have my car keys. Even worse, I looked in the window and saw that there were no books anywhere. I turned away from my car and walked back toward my apartment. I noticed that Sela had a puzzled look on her face. What was that about? She asked. What? He looked like he knew you. Well, we both have seen him before. Remember the party at the beginning of the year? His name is Calvin Ellis. Oh, yeah, my soror Cindy Shepard is crazy about him. They've been out a lot of times. Who is Cindy Shepard? You know her. Is she the brown skinned sister with the bad weave and green contacts? Yeah, but she's a sweet girl and really smart. Sela and I went back into the apartment and picked up where things had left off. Things went normally, or so they seemed. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe that I wouldn't be able to get it up, or that I would think of Friday night with Kelvin. Sela still excited me, and I love waking up with her in the mornings, her head lying against my chest. Saturday night went by swiftly, and on Sunday morning, Sela and I attended church. During the altar call, I was tempted to throw myself on the altar to repent for Friday, but I resisted. After dropping Sela off, I looked at my watch. 4 o'clock. I drove my car down Sharp Street toward my apartment and away from the student union in Kelvin. I was at a stoplight that seemed to stay red forever when I suddenly found myself turning right instead of left in the direction of the student union. As I reached the student union, I saw Kelvin leaning against the front door. I could tell he spotted me immediately. Before I could blow my horn, he was walking toward the driver's side of my car. Get in, I said. Are you sure? He asked. Come on now, Kelvin, quit playing. Okay, I give up, he said, grinning as he got in on the passenger side. Where to? I asked. You know this place better than I do. Let's go back to the scene of the crime. Your apartment? No. Where? The stadium. The stadium is usually empty around this time. Let's go. We drove to the parking lot of the stadium and went around through the fence that students used on game days. It was empty with the exception of a few football players running around the track. We went high up into the stadium so that we couldn't be recognized and no one could hear our conversation. The sky above was clear and blue, and the wind seemed to blow harder the higher we climbed. We sat opposite each other on the hard aluminum bleachers. It seemed as though we were in a vacuum, sitting alone in an enormous empty stadium. So what's up? I asked. You? What did you want to talk about? Friday night? What about it? Was that really your first time? What do you think? I think so. Why? I can just tell. How? I asked curiously. Trust me, I know. I bet. I heard you're dating Cinda. Cinda who? Cinda Shepard? We've been out a couple of times, nothing special. I told you I have a girlfriend back in Philly. Her name is Paula Wyatt. Oh, and do you have a boyfriend too? Don't be silly. I told you about that sissy shit. Well, this is all new to me. What do you mean you could tell? Yeah, I noticed that, but you're easy to read. What do you mean I'm easy to read? Don't worry about it. Just an expression. I just had this feeling about you when we met, kind of like a sixth sense. Kelvin paused and then continued. I don't think anyone else will pick it up unless they were in themselves. Raymond, I think you're pretty special, and I would like to become your friend, even if we don't ever sleep together again. I promise not to interfere with your relationship with your girlfriend, Celie. You mean Sela? I snapped. Yeah, whatever. The Friday night has to be our secret. You know, I plan to be a big football star in this place, and something like this, it could end it all. Who am I going to tell? I don't know. Well, don't worry. This is a secret I'll carry to my grave. Can I ask you a question? Kelvin asked seriously. Oh boy, here we go again. I said, nervous laughter. No, be serious. Was I the first guy to ever approach you? Yeah, do I look like a sissy? That's not what I mean. It's not about that sissy shit. Look at you. You're an attractive guy. I can't believe that Friday was the first time. Well, trust me, it was. I believe you, Raymond. It's not the end of the world. I don't know if I agree. I mean, nothing like this ever happened to me, I said. Raymond, if it hadn't been me, it would have been someone else. You sound so confident. I don't think it will happen again. We'll see. Is it okay if I have your phone number? Kelvin asked. I don't know if that would be cool. I have a roommate. What do you think I'm going to do? Call him and tell him what went down? No. Then stop tripping. I just want to keep in touch. There's nothing wrong with a friend calling a friend, right? I guess you're right. It's 332-8971. And yours? I don't know, he teased. I got a roommate. Now who's tripping? I asked. It's 332-9981. Thanks. I'll write it down when I get back to my car. Raymond, you know one time doesn't make you gay. It doesn't? No, Raymond, it doesn't. Well, we better get out of here before they think we're trying to burn this baby down. Burn it? Yeah, my freshman year, the black students demanded that the band stop playing Dixie and the cheerleaders stop carrying Confederate flags. When they refused, there were several flag burnings by the Black Student Union. Man, what have I gotten myself into? Are you talking about the flags or me? Both, Kelvin said with a lighthearted smile. I dropped Kelvin off by Westview and headed for my apartment. As I drove, I began feeling so many different tortured feelings about Kelvin and Friday night. When I arrived at the door, I could hear the stereo in my apartment blasting a new song, You Give Good Love. The first time I had heard it was early Saturday morning as Kelvin and I lay with our backs to each other. I thought to myself that it was such a beautiful song. When I walked in the apartment, my roommate Stanley was washing dishes. How was your weekend? He asked. Okay, I said. Who sings this song? It's a new singer. Her name is Whitney Houston. She used to be a model. And Ray, she is so fine. Look at the cover. The album is as good as she looks. I love that song. Yes, she is beautiful. Great, I thought to myself. Women still look good to me. I've been playing the album constantly. Anything special happen this weekend? Stanley asked. No, not really. Just a typical weekend in the country. And that was the first chapter of Invisible Life by the phenomenal author Lynn Harris. In that first chapter, we immediately opened up and we met Raymond and Sela, who are in a relationship together. And then we were introduced to, before we even get into Kelvin, we were also introduced into the Black sorority and fraternity life, with both of them a part of Greek letter organizations. And then we meet Kelvin, someone who it seems knew of their sexuality. Kelvin was very open in saying that he was bisexual and did not have a problem with saying that and was very open, which was different from Raymond. And I was a little bit like Harris because honestly, Elin Harris wrote this at a time where one, Black queer male characters were either invisible or they were typically reduced to stereotypes. He took a chance, and his seemed that they were a lot more layered, but they definitely were ambitious, and he wasn't afraid to show that they were even at time flawed humans, right? And that was one of the choices, reason why they got the door shut on him. A lot of times the publishers, like we said in the beginning, publishers did not want to take a chance on him, but he took a chance on himself. So it wasn't like they gave him with all these awards and stuff. No, he had to earn his keep, and his books became New York bestsellers repeatedly over and over again. Um, Before he passed away, he did receive NAACP Image Award nominations for his work. He also was honored a number of times by like some of the Black literary communities. But just his impact truly just lasted and showed us um, you have the power to one, believe in yourself, to two, not allow people needing to give you a yes to do the work that you want to do. And three, one of the things that I believe big is that representation is everything. I know it's so much, in having a book like this, you can talk as much, or I can talk as much about the author as I can about the book. But yes, in this opening, we got a chance to meet Raymond. We met Sela. We met Kelvin, and we can see off the top, this is going to be quite a challenge of a book as we see, well, what wins, what happens. Will Sela find out? What will happen between Kelvin and Raymond? What happened if they're fraternity brothers? Find out, will it matter? What I can tell you is that it mattered enough that this book turned into a whole series, and Lynn Harris, a multi New York Times best-selling author. But if you are enjoying these readings and just some of the context I'm giving, again, my name is Nakira. This is Black Art is Lit. You can find us on most of the places where you listen to your podcast. That be Apple Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio. I definitely do thank you so much. Share this episode with someone who still loves to sit and read books, or even if you like to listen to your audiobooks. I'm not afraid of that. We just want to make sure that you encourage others to continue reading books and continue subscribing to Black Art is Lit. Thanks, and until next time, have a good one.